and panting. His neighbor, Anastasia Vincent, and his half-brother, Jack, were the only ones who had a key, and this definitely wasn't Jack Hatfield. Jack hadn't been here in over a year, which was the last time they spoke. It was to thank him for a jazz CD Sammy had sent as a birthday present and peace offering. Sam, she gulped in her charming accent. They are after me. Who is? Sammy asked. Very bad men, she said, shaking, her eyes normally alert as those as a Nordic wolf, seemed wary and frightened. Sammy's Marine training was a little rusty. He hadn't worn a uniform for years, not since he was on one of his motorcycles, when a teen driver had hit him, sending him into a year of physical therapy and paving the way for a handsome settlement with the insurance company. Still, as the saying goes, once a Marine, always a Marine. Sammy was up and moving past her in an instant. He slammed his apartment door shut behind her, rattling the painting he'd bought at a flea market showing a shipwreck in the Farallon Islands. Then he locked and bolted the door and turned toward her. It's okay, he said, you're safe now. Her Arctic eyes locked on his. Are you sure? He wasn't, but he said, absolutely. No one would ever expect to find a beautiful girl in my apartment. She smiled half-heartedly. You're making a joke. I wish. Now relax and tell me what's going on, Sammy coaxed. She began to calm. He maneuvered her to the sofa and sat next to her, looking intently into her eyes. It was easy. They were the brightest, lightest blue he had ever seen. But he kept one ear trained on the door and the steps outside. They were old wooden steps, and they creaked. It would be difficult for anyone to sneak up on him. Anastasia Vincent was a strong, very special girl. Within weeks of her moving here from Moscow, he had learned she was a high-class call girl. That was probably how she got into this country, paying her way with favors, but that didn't matter. If there was one thing he learned in his 37 years, people did what they had to do. Hell, he was a professional party clown. Not a party animal, but a bona fide clown. Big red wig, big red nose, big red slippers, and lots of polka dots in between. Who was he to judge others? I'll pause right there. That's page 10 of Countdown to Mecca. Again today, 2 pages from the first 5 chapters. I'll be right back. Have you looked for it in a bookstore? What'd you find?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
We have breaking news today in the Savage Nation. As predicted, liberal Democrats gave Barack Obama a black eye. It's the biggest black eye of his life. Now, I got to explain to you, this trade deal was shot down not by the Republicans, but by the liberal Democrat wing. What you should also know is that this was Obama's biggest priority since forcing socialized medicine down our throats, which they did through trickery, telling us we'll learn what's in the bill after they pass it. They did the same thing here. This was shown to congressmen and congresswomen only in secret, only in the basement. They were not allowed to take notes out. It's like something out of a bad novel, what this character in the White House has done to this country. He has brought the worst elements of the Stasi to the intelligence community, the worst elements of gangsters in the ex-Soviet Union to the White House itself. But he's such a smooth con man that many of you still think he's a wonderful, kind, loving man. His own party said no to him today. So put that into your pipe and smoke it with your medical marijuana. And what can I say about Republicans who tried to get this passed? What can I say about sellouts like McConnell and about Orrin Hatch that I haven't said before? Nothing. And that's why I tell you the news is frustrating, and it's why I want to go back to my new novel launched today, Countdown to Mecca. And when I ask you whether you were able to buy it, you're going to hear stories that will show you once again the censorship that goes on in this country against Michael Savage and against conservatives in general. KBOI Radio. Ed, what did you experience today in your attempts to buy the novel?
Yes, I go to the Barnes & Noble here in Washington and Idaho. I run an armored car route, and I called every one of them to see if I could buy it because I loved your other books, and I look forward to reading it. And they're not carrying it. They don't have it. But they'll order it for you, but they were really reluctant to even talk about it.
That's right, because it's not about Rebecca Has Two Mommies or about the wonders of Fidel Castro. or how great gay marriage is. Therefore, they can't carry a book. This is how far we've come. It's the equivalent of book burning. We have the equivalent of book burning by not buying certain books for chain stores. That's book burning. And I'm sending you a free copy, though, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Let me take one more call on this subject, because this is shocking to me, by the way. When you see the big chains, I know they ordered the book. They printed, I think, 55,000 copies. Incidentally, let me be clear. I think the number is 55,000 first printing, which is enormous. You know, can I tell you something about the scale of publishing today? Something you don't know, and it's very difficult for authors today. When I was growing up, if I looked at heroes of mine like Ernest Hemingway, you look at the numbers of books that they sold, you look at authors like on a different scale, Henry Miller, you look at the numbers of books they sold, and then you get into the commercial marketplace, as I am, and you see a first printing of 55,000, you realize, it's not a big deal. It's not a million copy bestseller. You know what the pressures are on authors today to make numbers? It's beyond comprehension. And it's a miracle that I can get published at all, incidentally. I mean, I could always go back to self-publishing, as I did with Banned in Britain and some radio stories. I have my own publishing company. I can always put things out that way. But I'm talking about the mass market, what a censorship campaign is and what it does to the sales of a book. And that's why it's an important note, a side note, by the way. 855-400-7282. WABC in New York. Ferris, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation.
Good afternoon, Doc. I wanted to let you know what we're finding in the capital region of Connecticut. There's a suburb of Hartford.
This is my show to say something else. I know your voice. You change your name every day. What are you trying to say?
My name is Ferris Fluck. It's spelled F-L-U-K-E.
I don't care what your name is. What is it you're trying to say? Why are you mentioning Laura over and over again? Why?
Well, because she spoke up for you when I met her at the bookstore.
Good. And what's the point of today's call?
Well, here's the point, that the bookstore in her town have Countdown to Mecca, but the bookstores in the capital city of Hartford, you know, we have a particular disdain for the city of Hartford because it is decrepit. It's in the hands of corrupt officials. And that bookstore denies the book, even though they say that today is...
All right. It's a fair call. I'm going to send you a free copy. Countdown to Mecca is on the way. Well, let me continue with my little exercise in freedom of the press. And I'm going to go now to Chapter 3, again, the first pages of the next chapter. I'm moving on in the book. Remember, I'm only going to read 2 pages of 5 chapters, and then it's done today. That's it. It's going to be painless, and I think it's entertaining, or I wouldn't do it. Remember, the radio audience comes first, not the book-buying audience. I've got my priorities straight. So, Chapter 3. Jack had walked to the Hyatt. He intended to get a cab. "You're coming with me," Saul told Jack. The men started toward the street. "I don't know what this is about," Jack said. "I'm not sure I need heavy artillery, not your kind." "But you're not sure you don't," Saul said. "Don't worry, this is on the house, the ride anyway." Now remember, Saul is the Jewish gangster. There was no time to argue. Saul's car was parked right out front with a goon. The mobster whispered something to the bodyguard, then dismissed him with a jerk of his thumb, and got behind the wheel. Jack climbed into the passenger side of the mobster's factory-armored S-600. "Want me to punch directions into the GPS?" Jack asked. "GPS?" he scoffed. "This is my town too, Jack. Just tell me where we're going." Jack did, and Saul peeled from the front of the hotel. He shot into traffic like a shark going after a meal. "What are you getting into?" Saul asked as they zipped through the late afternoon traffic in San Francisco. Jack filled him in on what he knew. "Sounds interesting," Saul said neutrally. "Yeah," Jack agreed as he used his cell phone to look up the general Sammy had named. "Or it could all be nothing. My brother isn't the best judge of character. This girl could be on drugs or just crazy or lying. Though that would be a hell of a strange lie to make up," Jack thought. "I've heard people spill their guts when they're on drugs," Saul said. "Their narratives lack cohesion." "Everyone lacks cohesion these days, including CEOs," Jack shot back. "You know why?" Saul asked, nodding toward the windshield. "See there? You got a trolley driver, a postal carrier, a police officer. You know what they all have in common? Uniforms, unions, meaning There's a buffer between them and personal responsibility, Saul said. You know why I do what I do? Power, not me. It's the risk I like, said the gangster. Every day's a gamble. When I succeed, I make money. Those around me make money. But if I screw up, I'm a dead man. Those guys in the union screw up, they've got strength in numbers. Even when someone makes a mistake and people die because of that mistake, like an air traffic controller who takes a personal call when he should be watching planes, he's got an organization that insulates him, pads the fall. I got none of that. I'm rewarded for what I do, or I have to answer for it. You too. You've got personal responsibility. He wove around the car that was going too slowly. What we're doing now is about personal responsibility, about duty to family, about doing what's right. That used to be the American way, said Saul. It was done during World War II, when the government worked with the Italian gangsters to find who was sabotaging ships docked on the East River. And let me tell you something else, Jack. In 20 years, you're going to see the recruitment of white Aryan nation types by whites in gated communities to protect themselves from the armies of Obama's spawn. No argument there, Jack said with an angry shake of his head. He and Clinton let the Muslim interests overrun this country. Not the religious, not the faithful, but the hateful. They failed to filter out the ones who have nothing but hate and murder behind their obsequious smiles and disingenuous eyes. Saul snorted. Who's got the big vocabulary now? I'll stop right there. What you understand in what I'm reading to you right now is that I write political thrillers. And I have my characters express opinions that are not permitted to be expressed on Fox News. 855-400-7282. There is big news out there. There's another topic I'm going to get to today, which I think is interesting. Poll shows those in the U.S. drifting away from religion, which is an interesting story. The number of adults who self-identified as Christian fell from 78% to 70%. Driven mainly by drops among Roman Catholics and some Protestants, according to the stinking Pew Research Center poll. Non-religious U.S. adults who identify as atheist, agnostic, or of no particular faith have seen their ranks swell over that same time period by 6 percentage points to 22.8, or 56 million people. In other words, religion is dying in America somewhat. So I'm going to ask those of you under 30, because if I say, have you left the church? Most of my audience are older people. You'll say, no, I haven't. I go every Sunday. Please don't call if you're over 30. I want to know why the so-called millennials have given up on religion. That's an interesting question. And if you're under 30 and you're no longer religious, please tell, and I don't care what your religion is, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, because I can guarantee you as I speak to you on this show today that even young Muslims are not faithful anymore. So you don't understand what's going on. This may not be as bad as it seems. 855-400-7282 is the phone number. Let me take a couple of quick calls. Where's W Jim? Where is Jim? Okay, Pat on Pat on KSFO Radio. Go ahead, please. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I've listened to you for 20 years, and today I went into Barnes & Noble to buy your book, and, of course, there was absolutely nothing in the store. I went up to customer service, and I was informed that they have ordered 17 copies from the publisher, and they might be in today, but there's no guarantee.
Isn't that horrible? It just shows you what's... See, I told the publisher that unless the books are in the store today, the pub date, and if my listeners go in and it's not there, they're losing that buyer. And you know what? I know there's subterfuge going on under the surface. It's not coming from any particular person. They see my name. It's a blacklist, and it runs from Fox News right through the radio industry. And again, I'm not playing the victim. What will be will be. At the end of the day, I'm having a good life. But the fact of the matter is, it's a disappointment to people like you. And so let me, Pat, send you a free copy of Countdown to Mecca. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-COIN. This is really the biggest political story of Obama's career. He got defeated today by his own liberal wing. They knocked down Obama trade. And the only people